Thank you so much for joining the Fleet Forum Global Fleet Conference. My name is Carlos Roberto Güemes Scheden, and I am the UNHCR Senior Road Safety Coordinator. And the question I was given was, how can tracking data support in reducing road crashes in countries with a low road safety culture? When I think on countries with low road safety culture, I immediately think on places where there is some lack of signage, and there is also some lack of enforcement. Therefore, there are problems with the driver's behaviors. So based on these characteristics that came to my mind, I've answered this question with 4 points. The first point is that tracking data could be used for creating the spatial distribution of traffic crashes. So you can use telematics, which are devices that are used for tracking the position of the vehicles and monitoring some driver behaviors in order to collect data of how the vehicles are being utilized. So these systems provide the GPS, which means the Global Positioning System coordinates, to monitor the position of the vehicles. And this also includes the time when the traffic crashes occur, the time and the location. Therefore, based on this information, then you can identify if there are places where traffic crashes are occurring more frequently, or if there are sub-offices that are reporting traffic crashes more frequently. And based on that, then you can plan some interventions that could be based on changes on the infrastructure, could be based on changes on the way that the road safety is administered in the operation, or based on drivers' interventions. The second point is enforcement. And here I want to remind you about the safe system approach to road safety. The safe system approach to road safety has 3 principles. One is that human bodies are vulnerable. The other one is that people may make mistakes. And the third one is that there is a shared responsibility. The shared responsibility principle means that there is not only one actor responsible for road safety, but there are several actors who should share the responsibility. And when there is a lack of enforcement by the traffic police officers or by the local authorities, this doesn't mean that the organization just has to accept this lack of enforcement and that's it. What this means is that in these circumstances, the organization has a higher responsibility for enforcing its drivers' behaviors. And for doing that, there are 2 ways and 2 approaches are recommended. The first approach is to use the telematics for monitoring the driver's behaviors based on speeding events or seatbelt utilization, distractors. It depends on the type of telematics that they are using. You can use this for rewarding the good practices. So you identify the drivers who are performing the best, and based on that, you provide recognitions or rewards and use them as examples for the other drivers. And on the other hand, if you identify that there are drivers that are constantly coping with aggressive or reckless driving behaviors, and despite you call the attention to these drivers, you still are facing problems, then it is recommended to apply corrective actions on those drivers. Then you can use these devices also for monitoring driving hours and resting times. This is important because fatigue could be one of the root causes of the traffic crashes. And then this information could be used for identifying if there is a problem with over workload or excess of workload on drivers, or if they are coping with the recommended practices on resting times. And if you can identify these problems, then you can plan interventions to try to reduce the number of events in which drivers are working more hours than recommended, or when they are not complying with the recommended resting times. And finally, this information could be used for monitoring KPIs. And here I want to explain what a KPI is. Normally, people believe that the number of road traffic crashes are KPIs, and this is unfortunately not true, because the road traffic crashes are a negative consequence of the problems that we could have in the road safety management system. So they are negative outcomes, they are results. But actually the KPIs are measured based on the type of interventions that you are implementing. So you could, for instance, an intervention could be trying to train people. So the KPI will be the number of or the percentage of drivers who are trained. Or you can try to plan an intervention for reducing speeding related problems. So you monitor the number of speeding events, and then you estimate also the rates. So why it's important to pay attention to the numbers and in the rates? It is important because when monitoring KPIs, you can use the absolute numbers. For instance, how many excess of speed events were recorded, or how many fatigue-related problems were recorded. You use the absolute numbers for knowing the size of the problem. However, for knowing if the intervention is working or not, you also need to pay attention to the rates. And for estimating the rates, you might need to measure the total of kilometers traveled, or to base them based on the size of the fleet. It depends on what you are measuring. But I will put this as an example. For instance, this is information of the excess of speed events. And as you can see, from October to December, there was an increment and then there was a reduction. But you don't really know if this increment or reduction is responding to also the changes on the utilization of the vehicles. Because normally you will expect to have reported more excess of speed events when the vehicles are used more, and a reduction when the vehicles are used less. Therefore, in order to really see if an intervention is working or not, you need to pay attention to the rates. In this case, it was the rate of excess of speed events over the total of kilometers traveled. So as you can see, from October to November, despite there was some sort of reduction on the total of kilometers traveled, the rate of excess of speed events was actually increasing, which was a problem. And then this operation decided to intervene. In this case, it was based on the application of corrective actions to drivers. And there was an actual reduction on the rates of excess of speed events once they started applying the corrective actions, despite the fact that from January to February, there was an increment on the total of kilometers traveled. So that's why it is important to estimate the rates. So you can use the absolute numbers to know the size of the problem and the rates for knowing if the intervention is working or not. I hope this clarifies how tracking data could help approaching road safety problems in places where there is a low road safety culture. Thank you so much.